Ladies and gentlemen, the panel will start shortly, so please begin moving to your seats. At this time, please turn off or silence your electronic devices. As a reminder, before we get started, audience members will be invited to ask questions at the standing mics on the floor at the appropriate time. If anybody here in the panel area misplaced a business card holder, we may have it here at the AV table, so please come see us over here if you have misplaced a leather business card holder. Admiral Rondo, she's the president of the Naval Postgraduate School. The second woman to make the rank of Vice Admiral in the Navy. She's retired. She has more hair than I remember from her photo. Tim was asking me what she looked like.
We have to, the mic's going to be live the whole time, or do we have to click the button?
No, they should be good.
Okay.
Ma'am, just a quick I gotta present a bit, so we do have 20 seconds before you get off the stage, please. Thank you. Thank you so much. And the mic should be good where you're at. It should be good, yes.
I'm going to ask.
Good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tim Reyna. I'm the CIO for AFC International, and I have the distinct pleasure and honor of introducing today's moderator. And good news, it's our final session for the day, so we save the best for last, ladies and gentlemen. So in our stage today, we have From Learning to Lethality, Accelerating Technology Leadership Through Warfare Education. But just a quick note before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to thank Cohesity for their sponsorship of this panel session. They are represented this afternoon by Marlon McFate, Public Sector CTO, and CISO. I'd like to invite Marlon on stage to say a few words.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Glad to know it's the last session of the afternoon, right? So, welcome to From Learning to Lethality, Accelerating Technological Leadership Through Warfighter Education here at West 2026. As he said, my name is Marlon McFate. I'm the CTO and CISO at Cohesity, and we're a proud sponsor of West. So with that, modernizing the Navy isn't just about fielding new platforms or technologies. It's about extracting intellectual advantage from data at scale. As AI, autonomy, and other emerging capabilities reshape warfare, success depends on how well we understand, trust, and operationalize the data that fuels them. Warfighter education and applied research are what turn vast stores of operational, research, and historical data into insight, speed, and resilience. This panel explores how education and industry collaboration help the Navy enterprise transform data into decisive advantage for the fleet, faster learning, stronger readiness, and greater resiliency in contested environments. So it is my pleasure to welcome you to this session in behalf of AFC International and the U.S. Naval Institute. Thank you.
Thank you, Cohesity and Marlon, for that. Now I have, there's a huge resume here, but we have some huge highlights. And ma'am, I'll take that as we get ready to go then. All right, we always listen to the boss. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to turn the mic over to Admiral Rondu. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, you bet. Thank you. Well, good afternoon.
It's great to have you all here, and I will say this, is that as the president of Naval Post Graduate School, it's great to be here amongst industry partners, educators, and those who are also alumni. And I want to thank you for being here, for being at this conference, which is a really good opportunity to learn about emerging questions and technologies and the brilliance of the American mind. I am reminded every day when I walk around the campus at NPS that truly this is still a country that is freedom's forge, and that we can make things, manufacture things, create things, work together, and learn together. And the fact that our military is talking about intellectual advantage in partnership with decision advantage makes my job and the job of my entire team have high purpose, because this is where we will win, and we will fight, and we will win. I am very pleased and honored to have before us a very distinguished panel of operators, of educators, and of industrial leaders. And that's the kind of ecosystem that NPS works with every day, is that kind of a team looking at how we help the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, the Space Force, and the Army to think in a different way about what war in the 21st century looks like and how we succeed. You see all of our leaders here. Rear Admiral Alexander, who is the Deputy Chief of Naval Personnel, of Commander Burdahl, who's a PhD student at NPS, and who's brilliant and has many different kinds of questions, and he also laughs a great deal, so that's a good thing. We also have with us out of Saronic, one of our great leaders there, and if you will forgive me on this, I'm going to have to also ask to be sure that I have the name down right. Rob Lehman. Now, Rob comes from a company that we at NPS worked with very closely. Saronic and Rob's leadership has developed now a real partner in what they're able to do as we go about the business of thinking about things differently, particularly in the autonomous world. And then, of course, we have Vice Admiral Mike Vernaza. The Admiral has been terrific as a leader for us, as he has been pushing us to the ends and the outreaches of everything we are thinking about in the IW world. So before we came into the room, we had an interesting conversation, and it is what I'm going to start with for questions. So the CNO today talked about upgunning mastery. Upgunning mastery. I asked our panelists what that means to them, and so I thought I would start with Rear Admiral Alexander and to have him tell us how he sees that term, and let all of the other panelists also answer that question. So, sir, what does that mean to you when the CNO speaks in that way?
Well, ma'am, thank you very much. And for everybody here, thank you for being here this afternoon. Do appreciate the fact that we are probably the only thing between you guys and a beer, which is happening right behind us. So appreciate you sticking with us. Upgunning mastery. I'd flip the term and use the other term that CNO used, which was theoretical understanding. And we need to ensure that we are creating leaders who have a theoretical understanding. And in my mind, that means a number of things. First off, they're capable of critical thinking. They can logically attack complex problems. At the same time, they possess leadership skills and high emotional intelligence, and able to communicate at all levels, up, down, and across. And then at the same time, they're fluent with the current tools of the day. I think that's what we're looking for, and what those tools are could mean different things for different people. But we do recognize this panel looking forward, we are talking about AI. So They need to be data literate. They need to understand the AI tools. They need to understand what they can do for them and what they can't do for them. Need to have an understanding and be a questioning attitude with regard to using the models.
So, Admiral, and for the panelists, I am absolutely hoping that you will challenge each other. So I'm going to skip over you for a minute, Commander, and go next to Rob as to what that means for you to upskill and to upgun mastery of what we're doing here.
Sure, thanks, ma'am. First, you have to define what mastery means in today's era, right? You master something, and 10 days later, a new model's come out, a new tool's come out. So defining what mastery means and how quickly you can iterate on that definition is really where the unlocks occur. So intellectual curiosity and continuous learning mindset are critical. Those are both buzzwords. But at the end of the day, you're looking for how you can tap into the individual desires and quirks, frankly, of the folks on your team, and how you can kind of enable them to focus on their side quests. I think from a .mil-PF perspective, you can teach and train and adhere to the curriculum, but how do you keep it updated? You're not going to get a curriculum approved at the same cadence as the tech is developing. So how do you enable and empower the folks on your team to, outside that defined curriculum, while still being in a T&E environment, pursue the things that they are most interested in, that they're going to keep pace with that development of their own volition, often on their own time.
So Rob, just one more question prior to going to Admiral Vernaza. You have been in the Marine Corps, and now you're in a fabulously brilliant company. How do you see the military in terms of your clients and how they look at the mastery of their world, and what would you change to make us better partners?
I think the more you are standing shoulder to shoulder with your customers in uniform, the more magic happens. Demos and test events are valuable and powerful, but they're pretty short-lived, even if you're involved from the initial planning conference through the FPC through NDEX. It's when you're on the water every day, sitting in a jock next to an operator, that is where the human relationship builds, the information sharing of not just what does the contract say you must do or what I must get from you, but what are the things you wish you had? What are the things that make you tick? And in some cases, some of the coolest products that we've come up with have been side quests that were born out from an engineer, that were born out of a conversation with an end user. So again, how do you enable and empower? On our side, it's capital and time and free reign to follow that side quest. But when those are done repeatedly alongside warfighters, you get a lot more value out of it. So it's hard to have everybody be actively engaged all the time. But when you do have those opportunities, how can you maximize them for both sides, industry and government?
Thanks, Rob. Admiral, upgunning mastery.
All right. Thank you, Admiral. So during that part where CNO was talking about upgunning mastery, he also talked about we have too much reach back. So I took that topic in a different direction. I believe that means that we have self-sufficient, confident sailors who know how to operate and maintain their equipment from competition, crisis, and conflict. And that also means they've developed the habits of mind and habits of action, so they know what to do when the lights go out. And that, I truly believe, starts in the schoolhouse and then throughout the entire OFRP, where we continually look to develop that sailor's mastery across the entire training continuum and gets after that.
I'd just add one point. I think that self-sufficiency starts with that foundational level of knowledge. Without that confidence that you know how to troubleshoot a piece of equipment, fix a gas turbine engine, repair something, you're never going to build that self-sufficiency. I think that's what we're striving for, is that foundational level.
Yeah, I agree.
And I also think that kind of goes back to Rob's point. If that foundational level is changing based on the technology changing so rapidly, then what is that? There's a foundation that we think we understand, and then there's some aspect of that foundation that needs to be built upon. And so I wrote down sailor side quests as a really good idea to actually have that space available to people on ships, people on shore tours, to actually be able to take advantage of that and actually change the way that they think. And I think that's kind of what we see in the classroom at NPS, is that it's not just that you've learned new things, because that's great, but that you think in a new way. And I think that goes to the Admiral Caudle's quote from Admiral Rickover, the end is not knowledge but action. And that's really what we're all here about this week, I think.
Okay, so you're a PhD student, and a brilliant one at that, in quantum. So you're learning quantum. Today's learning bright, shiny object is AI. So mastery runs from operations at sea with AI and now quantum. What is your view as a younger leader in the Navy as to how we help that mastery, the self-sufficiency happen in such an efficient way, self-sufficiency with efficiency, in time for the operation that is in front of you tomorrow?
Yes, ma'am, that's a great question.
Thank you very much, Jens. I appreciate that.
So I think I'm kind of a test case a little bit, because I do some family things. I was derailed from the golden path of many line officers. Medical things and things are great, so not to worry. But it did send me to the War College. And then I went and did wargaming. And then I got to go to NPS. And so, I'm a pilot by trade, and now I'm doing quantum sensor, design and development. And so there's nothing special about me, but I was just lucky to get into the kinds of programs that are putting people together. So when we talk about AI, I know what I know from ChatGPT and the like, and that's what I know of AI. But what I'm in the environment at the NPS and NPS Foundation, there are a lot of people who really know a lot about AI. And so it is those opportunities for people like me who have recently been living on a ship, who now are no longer doing that. And those are the wonderful opportunities here this week, other opportunities, training events, live fires. These are the opportunities that are really wonderful. The challenge then that I don't have an answer to is what happens next Monday when we all go home. Yeah. And that's the real challenge, I think.
You're good.
I would also offer, the question is AI and how do we get people comfortable with AI, or, paraphrase the question. I think it starts with educating them on AI. I think it starts with giving them access to the tools, and you have seen some of that already happen. I think on everybody's login browser, you now have access to Gemini. That is a great start. Get our sailors actually out there using it. But at the same time, we need to have sailors questioning what they're seeing back from AI. And I'll give you an example. In order to prepare for this panel, I went to Gemini and I put in a couple of sentences about this, and I said, let me know what the expected questions are. About half of the questions and answers were absolute garbage. So we need to educate our sailors that AI is not the end-all be-all, and at the end of the day, we need leaders who can pair their knowledge and their intuition with the high-speed data models.
So Admiral, you've talked about, okay, so let's go then to the next thing. You talk about foundational education, and I had posed that to you as a counter to the latest thing, whether or not it's nuclear things back in the old days, or it's AI things now, it's quantum now, and yet you have a sense of the foundational education that is needed. What does that mean?
I think unfortunately I think it means different things for different problems. And your foundation, if you're a physics student, may be slightly different than everybody else's foundation if you're an English student. But at the end of the day, it goes back, how to approach complex problems. You can think and you can reason and you have leadership skills. That to me is the foundational level of knowledge, and that's why the higher education that we have within the Navy is so incredibly important, because if we think that AI is going to fix all of our problems, we are fooling ourselves. But that foundational level of knowledge that I've said a couple of times is more and more important moving forward.
Admiral Vernaza, one of the things that I believe the CNO is also interested in doing is eventually taking the Rapid Capabilities Office and embedding it in the whole Navy, the mindset, the behaviors, the practices, and putting it in the whole Navy, so it's not separate from the other. It is within the mindset about rapid capabilities done with speed and done with and on time or in advance of time. As the NAV I-4 commander, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think I love the fact that we've stood up the Rapid Capabilities Office. I think Seiko leading that is fabulous. But I could see that happening where we get a really good jump start on that. We lay the foundation well. It's kind of settled matter, and then we start transferring that to a cross-domain type of event where every domain now has some sort of rapid capabilities instantiated inside of it. So for IW, well, that would mean we've done a lot of work on AI, but most of the things that we do are lead into the battle space. The battle space awareness, the integrated fires, the assured command and control. So as we think about warfighting broadly, we're always thinking about the second and third order capabilities we need to have if we go into contested environments, the capabilities that we need to bring on board that may not exist, and how do we work with the OpNav staff, how do we work with industry, teams like Saronic and others to generate those capabilities that we're going to have. So I think broadly for us, we do think along those lines already, but we just haven't had, I guess, either the capacity or the capability to get to the scale and speed that we need to have, which is why I think that stand-up of that office is going to be very important in the out years.
So I think there are some pitfalls with having an RCO-like organization federated across the enterprise, and it's tied to acquisition authority, right? So at the battalion level, having an innovation officer is great because you can take kind of the kit that you have, the doctrine that you have, the missions that you have, and you've got some maneuver space to get creative, and you're empowering someone that's not jeopardizing an acquisition strategy, budgetary issues that go all the way up to SASC and HASC and SACD and HACD, where when you do have, I think innovation cells are great, RCOs, depending on how you implement them, are great, but to empower Admiral Kano's organization, if there are sub-RCOs going off on their own side quests that have budget and contracts with them, it's really hard to keep things straight and ensure that you're not going in different directions that conflict with each other. And the best of intentions can draw the ire of appropriators, and that's the quickest way to halt a program. So I think if you're going to take that RCO federated approach, it's a wicked problem set for Admiral Kano and her team to synthesize what each of those organizations are doing, when and to whom, so that the large Big Blue Arrow acquisition decisions can be aligned. So it's not impossible, but it's really hard.
Yeah, no, I agree with that too. I mean, the part of standing up the Naval Capabilities Office was also paired with acquisition reform, right? So I agree with you. You have to have one with the other, and I just think we'll have to see where that goes, because I think we're probably 2 months into it. So yeah, we have
Voyage
time.
of discovery.
Yeah,
Rob, I would also argue that the work that we're doing together in Little Creek, while not called a Rapid Capability Office, is what we're trying to get after. And it's the idea of teaming industry with engineers, with the acquisition community, and most importantly with operators to rapidly turn on a problem so that we can solve a capability gap or an operational problem. And we are finding that it has been hugely successful in the work that's happening in Little Creek.
I just have a question, Admiral, on that. Is it strictly that it's an organizational effectiveness change that's leading to these good things, or are we finding different people? Are we taking people and educating them differently? What is the special sauce there to do that, to make these capabilities, rapid capabilities offices more effective? Is it just an organizational effectiveness? Because if so, then that might be very easy to change.
I'll turn it over to Rob in a second. From my opinion, it's you change the organizational construct. And having an operator sitting with industry, sitting with the acquisition, so the operator can say, this is wrong. The industry can say, I can fix it. The engineer says, we know you can fix it. And acquisition can pay for it immediately. You can quickly get things done.
Yeah, I think this is an individual business, right? Every unit that I was in or in charge of, you had individual contributors that had an outsized impact, and you could never know who that person was going to be when you took command. So I think the magic, as the Admiral said, is when you put an operator with somebody who's coming from Meta or Anthropic, who's never been associated with defense, and is sitting there learning about an operational problem, when you get those whiz kids exposed to something, they get really motivated, and they will not sleep until they solve that problem. And you just look at our Celsius bill at Saronic, and you'll understand, how hard these folks grind. But I think the Admiral's absolutely right. What we have when you have consistent operationally relevant environments and 12, 18, 24-hour days sitting next to each other, identifying the problem, and having a vendor who's not saying, stand by for your change order, or we need to add that to the statement of work. When you have an OTA and some of the flexible contracting authorities, like the RCO and other organizations are putting into place, that's where the real unlock happens. We spend IRAD at the cyclic rate. It's obscene for the best possible reasons, because that's what our investors want us to do. It is go fast, build the best kit that can be not only manufactured but adopted at scale, and you only get those reps and sets when you have more than just onesie twosie opportunities to take input and turn it into kind of an operational output. So operational capabilities can be developed and modified very quickly, and we're seeing that every day.
Do you want to add anything else? Okay. So it sounds like, in many ways, you all are talking about a culture of learning that is really important in the actual learning enough to be the master or to ask the right questions. Do we feel as though the culture of learning in the military is optimized? Are we at our best right now? Because we are together, Rob, to your point, we are together, we're intimate, we're intense, we are together. But oftentimes we're not, because then we come to the shore and do other things. So what is it that would optimize a culture of learning that each of you has talked about in some fashion? Yes, sir.
In my mind, we need to drive the educational institutions closer to the operational commands.
Okay.
I think that every day our centers of higher education should be working on real operational problems, and if possible at the right classification level. And I know that's very difficult for a number of reasons. But I would envision the operational commander providing the question, this is what the problem I need to solve, and the academic institution deciding how we would solve it. So the operational commands keep the centers of higher education grounded in reality, and the education centers are free to come up with innovative ideas that feed back into our operational commanders.
Okay. Jens?
Yeah, and I think if we look at the force and the fleet at all levels, I think we are finding opportunities to optimize better, ma'am. I think so. And if we can get out of this mindset that the highest level of readiness is day one of deployment, that's something that needs to be changed, probably. But this idea of rewarding people for that sort of mindset, I think there are some organizational ways that we can either monetarily or, but people don't actually really want to innovate for money. They want to innovate for, opportunities or growing themselves or working on hard problems. I mean, that's what really motivates people. And I think it really does come down to alignment. And I think if we think about ships that we've served on or squadrons that we've been a part of, I mean, is everybody aligned from the top to the bottom? And I think if we find that alignment, then you're not just going off on a side quest just because you want to. You're going off on a side quest because you're really driven to the mission and you're aligned to that mission and you know what you're doing it for. So I think there's opportunity to inspire everybody up and down the line to keep that passion alive.
Thanks, James. Rob, any thoughts on that?
Well, I think, look, if you're the type of operator that is on a path or has the desire to go to MPS and pursue, higher education, that's not who we need to target. Those are self-starters who are going to find their way and find their path. I think the magic here is how do you find the NCO that is eager and focused on something that is either related to their billet or tangential, and how do you empower them? And I think something we need to get comfortable with is their interest may be something that is setting them up for success when they take the uniform off, and we need to be okay with that and extract the value while they're still in. I think it's an uncomfortable topic, but at the end of the day, I'm a retired communications officer. We had a horrible time with people getting cyber certs and then going out into industry. But guess what? We used the hell out of them while we still had them, and that is okay. So how do you target those people who are self-starters trying to leverage kind of their excitement and interests? It can be good for them and good for the service, and I think we shouldn't be afraid to say that. Look for those people, empower them, even if you know you're going to lose them.
So, Admiral, I think we've only scratched the surface, I think, on this learning journey that we're on. So the Vice Chief has started, several years ago with GRGB, instilling that self-assessment, continuous learning, never complacent mindset. How are we going to improve ourselves? How are we going to improve with industry? So I think Navy broadly is starting to get that culture driven into it through that GRGB process as well. I'm a big fan of always using the warfighters' requirements and what we learn in our warfighting development centers to help drive that partnership with industry, because I think those are our most pressing challenges that we have at the WDCs, and Chris alluded to that in his comments as well. The sky's the limit, I think, on here on out. We've got, I think, a good culture now where some of these barriers have been removed, and we can really start doing that teaming and doing that pairing to get after what we need to do for the Navy and the nation going forward. Yeah.
So Admiral, I'm going to do this with you. The CNO and others have talked about the importance of understanding command and of decision-making at the command level. But indeed, emerging technology has actually moved some of that decision-making down. So what is the actual difference between intellectual advantage, and you've all used words like judging and judgment, discernment, and understanding. What is the difference between that intellectual advantage that now is being used as a term and technical proficiency, and how do you know when they've come together at a sweet spot or that they are in balance with each other?
I think we're still trying to figure that out, that as technology advances, mastery, to our earlier topic, is going to be more difficult. But there's there's no substitute, I think, for the experience you get over time and the judgment you develop over time in the jobs that you're in. So when the CNO talked about enhanced mission command today and pushing things down with technology and pushing that to the lowest level, there were a few things in there that he also talked about. One is being able to sense and make sense in the environment, and the other one was the level of risk. So the commander will only push down using technology to what he or she is comfortable with on that acceptable level of risk scale, but has to ensure that tactical edge has the awareness that the commander has when he or she makes that call. And so I still think we're doing a lot of learning by doing through wargaming, that we do both at the Naval War College with you folks at MPS and out in the Pacific.
I'm looking at the clock, and I want to be able to answer to have the questions from the audience here. If you have any, please come up to the microphone and let us know what you have. Yes, sir.
I have a question and I have a request. I request that every person here look up a film called Away All Boats, because my question is based upon that. It's about an AKA or an APA during the Second World War. My question goes like this. A number of years, I speak to sailors from Camp Pendleton to 32nd Street to Coronado to the SEALs. And I ask them, who wants to be a Command Master Chief? I asked that question about 3 or 4 years ago with the former Secretary of the Navy. And it goes like this. No one wants to volunteer to be a Command Master Chief. I asked the board here to tell me how you're getting over that philosophy that they don't want to leave their community, but they do want to take and stay in the Navy. So help me out as to how you're educating your chiefs to leave their communities, because I have no idea why, but they say, I don't want to be a Command Master Chief. I don't want to be a Command Master Chief. So I leave that for the board. Whoever wants to pick up that.
Sir, I'll jump on that first. I disagree with your premise. All right, I've been a commanding officer 6 different times. During every one of those tours, I had multiple chiefs, senior chiefs, master chiefs knocking on my door looking for recommendations to be CMCs. And it was long discussion with them about why they wanted to be a CMC, but most of them I couldn't talk out of them. I think that that is something that we're actually doing very well in the Navy right now, is that CMC program, and I think we're getting incredible talent into it.
And I'll give you credit for that. I didn't know that you had solved that problem.
I'm not sure I've solved it. I'm just saying, based on a data point of 6 command tours, I had plenty of people signing up for it.
Thank you very much. I
Yes, sir.
appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir, very much. Some more questions from the audience.
Admiral, thank you very much for a great panel.
Yes, sir.
I think there's a number of conundrums here, and a lot of it has to do with how you empower people. I think, Rob, you may have mentioned that. And being able to push that down so those that are willing to step forward and take initiative and do this kind of thinking that we're talking about actually do it. And they don't get suppressed and knocked down. So that's the balance, because we have to have structure at the same time when we go to war, so we know what the outcome and response we're going to get. But the question I have is our manpower personnel system, which is somewhat legacy and I don't think has changed particularly for a long time, the right system that we have today to engender the kind of things that we're looking for in this future force? When Admiral Caudle talked about the fact that any chief who had to go back and reach back because he had a problem, he's right on the one hand, and I agree with him completely, but on the other hand, maybe that ship hasn't had a casualty for years. That guy on that ship is not going to have the same experience as the man who is, or the woman who is at SIMA, who's dealing with those problems every single day. So, I mean, it's a complex set of things. You need the reach back, because the reach back could give us an asymmetric advantage over an enemy. At the same time, we want to empower our crews to be able to stand on their own wherever they possibly can. So back to my question, which is, do we have the right manpower? What adjustments would you make to the manpower system to maybe better improve our ability to get at the types of things we're talking about, which is upgunning mastery?
Yeah, I'll go with that to start. I think we do have the right manpower system to do that. You know, CNO said he has 84 rates that he's always concerned with and thinking about. And I think there's certainly a future where we may have to add some additional rates or break out some of the rates to be more specific to get after that mastery piece. But starting in the schoolhouse and growing that talent and growing some of those foundational skills, I think is vitally important. And I think, you know, where the CNO's coming from in terms of his comments regarding that, is, as a guy who grew up asking, go ask the chief. And when I walked into that chief's mess and I had, MMCM, BTCM, engineman chiefs, they knew inside and out those systems. And they could teach ensigns like me about boiler water, feed water, and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's exactly where his mind's at on that, is that we have to always maintain the go ask the chief mentality, make sure that those chiefs are able to do that. But it starts in the schoolhouse, and it's a foundation of learning where they develop those skills.
I think in the era of AI, I'll move it more to the left and focus on the recruiting challenge. So from an industry perspective, if you look at the top AI talent in the marketplace right now, typically the best of the best will go to fintech. The next best will go to the Anthropics, the OpenAIs, the Googles of the world. Then you get some folks who are really good who will go to defense tech. And we've had to kind of flip that paradigm and get folks from that first group to come to the defense tech group. And it's been hugely challenging. We have tools at our disposal that the fleet doesn't. Certainly Recruiting Command doesn't. But how can we attract the talent, the foundational things that a sailor is going to have to know? We can't lose sight of those skill sets. But at the same time, if we think we are going to be able to compete, if we don't get some of that top talent and find creative ways to allow them to serve, I think it's going to go poorly for us. One flip side to that is I don't think taking folks from industry or from the tech community and throwing a uniform on them mid-career, at least in the Marine Corps, that does not go over well, right? Earn your equilibrium and anchor. Just find ways to incentivize people who are willing to come in. Let them know it's temporary, and they're going to be rewarded on the back end. It's a wicked problem, but I think we have to find a way to get those people, instead of going to a fintech firm on Wall Street, to come raise their right hand and serve for 4 or 8 years.
Sir, I think it's a great question, and I'm hopeful that there's some revolutionary things that you can do, that we can do, which is possibly getting rid of up and out, flattening our organizations. These innovative organizations look extremely flat sometimes. There's some real benefit to that. There's also some really big challenges in terms of running a military like that. So that's not necessarily the solution, but it does get to the, even the other question the other gentleman raised is, even if someone doesn't want to get to E9, there's still a great path for that person. And that path is, we're all going to be the benefactors of using that person in the perfect place for that person. And that takes a lot of change of our current personnel system. And I think it's going to take some real weirdness to get to look like an innovative, kind of personnel management system. But I'd love to get your comments on that, because, the up and out, we've lost a lot of great folks, and I'm at 20 years right now. I've lost a lot of great folks who were just, it was time, but they still wanted to serve. Finding ways to use that might be a benefit to all of us.
Yeah, so what I would add to that, the bottom line answer is I'm not sure. And I don't think I have any great insight into our personnel manning and personnel system to make changes. I would tell you that very much like the gentleman just said, we are losing talent at different times in the Navy. One of the big ones is chiefs wanting to become officers, all right? Many cases they want to go become officers to lead more sailors, to have more responsibility, and that's great. Other times they're looking at what's the paycheck going to be, okay? I think there are ways to fix that. We should look at the pay scale for E7s, E8s, E9s, because we need great chiefs to stay in the Navy.
So for Rob and for Admiral Alexander, one of the challenges that comes into all this is, how do you teach ethics along with emerging technology? And the title of this particular panel is Learning and Lethality. How do you think about ethics in your world, Rob? And Admiral, some of your thoughts on this as well?
I think it's a good question, ma'am. Frankly, I think we overthink it a little bit. Enduring principles still apply here. So right now, you can give Saronic vessels verbally through an LLM a 5-paragraph order, commander's intent, desired end state, what you must do, what you must not do. And within those constraints, the platforms will go execute that mission. That's no different than me uttering that to a platoon commander or a squad leader and them pushing it down to their fire teams. So I have to have that same moral and ethical compass when I'm issuing an order to something with a heartbeat or something that has ones and zeros going through it. I think it comes down to the same leadership principles that are, have been around since the formation of military service writ large. So I actually think it's a little bit of a misnomer that the technological challenges put you in a moral dilemma. It's the same burden of command, whether you're commanding a robot or a human. And I think the difference is policy plays a much bigger role with the robots. So it's less of a judgment call and more of what does the black and white policy say I can and can't do in this situation. So I actually think it's a little bit more clear on the robotic side as it stands right now, mainly because it says what you can't do. There's a lot less gray, I think, with robots as it stands right now.
From my perspective, I listed off what I consider as foundational level for education. And that was, critical thinking, logically attack complex problems. But then one of those is possess leadership skills and high emotional intelligence. And I do think that it behooves our education centers, higher education learning centers, to continually realize that that is an important area that we must continue to educate our students in. And that really goes to the other conversation that we had, which to me I think is the most important question is, if we're adding these tools and everything is additive, at some point we stop teaching something. And I think we need to be very, very clear about what we're giving up, because we potentially run into real danger when we stop doing something. And the example I like to use is navigation within the surface community. We rolled out the new VMS, the Voyage Management System, electronic navigation, about 10, 15 years ago. We gave up on the foundational level of knowledge which is navigation and how to use paper charts. What happened? We had 3 collisions that can be linked directly back to, 3 groundings that can be linked directly back to that. So we need to be very careful about what we give up.
Yes, sir. Sir.
Hello, I own a corporation that designs and develops computer-based training. Lots of DoD, of course. Carlos joined my board, which I'm very tickled about. But the main thing I want to tell you, I charge the Navy 10x to do computer-based training, level 1, level 2. I charge my commercial clients 3x because I'm using AI to its extent. We don't have to, you don't have to do graphics anymore. We don't have to do questions. AI does it all. I haven't gotten the permission to use AI yet. I do the ready, relevant learning, a number of other Navy things, but we do it all by hand. It's a butts and seats contract, so fine, I have 120 people that does that contract. I could do it with half that, a third that, if I get the permission to use AI.
I just have a question back to you, sir. Why do you think that is?
Who has the authority to give you permission to do it?
So I3 is my contract. I do all the training for them. They've not been permission. There's been no permission to use AI.
I would reach out to NETC.
Yeah. I would love it. I don't need to charge the Navy 10x when we could do it for 3.
Admiral Hoffman.
We agree with that completely.
Yeah, Admiral Hoffman is down at NETC. I know he's using AI on some of our IW curriculum development. It's probably at a here. It probably needs to go here. I would reach out to him.
It would be super. I used to have my ISD spend a week doing questions. I'm sorry, AI does the questions. You don't need to spend a week. Graphics too. I mean, whatever. As everyone knows, it's getting better every month. Let's use it.
Yeah. I would talk to your contracting team on the Navy side. I mean, there's ATOs for tactical systems whose code was, partially written by Claude or whatever. So, yeah, I would imagine an ATO for a lethal system is harder to get than a CBT. So, if it's a term or condition in your contract, I think we're certainly in an environment where those can get changed quickly. So, I'd start with the contract side on the front end, and then certainly, as the Admiral said, NETC can give you kind of the...
He can give you a stick and rudder check.
Captain?
Yes, gentlemen, I was curious, we are in this race, right, to enable our forces with AI. And as Admiral Alexander just mentioned, we have to stop. We're probably going to have to stop doing something. I see this tension, this natural tension between AI enabling and AI undermining our ability to develop critical thinking and judgment, not just once we're in the service, but in the feeder primary and secondary schools. So I'm curious your thoughts. How do we maybe get ahead of that?
Sure. I think the individual remains paramount here. So software development has really been commoditized. What makes a good software developer versus just somebody who can hammer code are those unique insights and the ability to understand what's the desired end state, how to debug it, and the processes. So it's actually, software developers, I can't believe I'm saying this, but are kind of philosophers in their own right now. And the ones that are truly brilliant are not that great at coding anymore. Those skill sets have atrophied. So I think you can draw a parallel in the military where I like how you framed it, like enabled versus undermined, because if you're overly reliant on it for everything, you will lose those foundational concepts that Admiral Alexander's talking about, and you lose those core warfighting functions, and you've abdicated responsibility. So I think we should stick on the AI-enabled side, and kind of, my kids would freak out at this, but like, let them cook. Like, let the good people leverage the tools that they have at their disposal. And it goes to the recruiting and retention side too. Take those people who have just a voracious appetite for something that might be adjacent to their rating and provide them the mechanisms to go push hard into that space. It's how we've unlocked some of our coolest discoveries, was folks working outside of their primary function. But hard concur. If we just abdicate all of our capabilities, what do we need us for?
Yeah, I agree with that, Rob. I mean, Mike, what we're trying to do in the mock, and we're going to use AI to enable a lot of things to try to make us move at machine speeds and do all the huge amounts of data crunching that's going to need to happen if we go to crisis or conflict. But we're never going to replace the commander. We're never going to replace the intuition, the judgment, the years of experience, the lessons learned and relearned that those commanders and those staffs bring to that decision-making that needs to take place. The AI is going to help us make it faster, and I hope, bring huge amounts of data sets at all classification levels to give that commander that informed picture that will help us beat the adversary.
Thank you.
Okay, so the last question for all of you is, if learning and education are foundational to everything else that we're doing, what, in your opinion, would be the most important thing to do in the education world to be able to fight and win and to have the warfighters that we need at the edge of the fight? What do we need to do as a Navy or as a military? Mike, over to you first.
No, that's a good question. Well, as you know, IW is the largest contingent at Naval Postgraduate School, so we're doing a lot.
And
there.
that's true. But due to your leadership, they're also leading in many ways as far as how they approach what they're doing. So thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. So what do we need to do? Well, I think there needs to be a tighter shot circle, and we've talked about this, a tighter shot circle between the education institutions and the warfighters. But I see that manifested where we're going to have to do more wargaming, and I think we're going to have to really invest in LVC training.
Yeah.
Because if you network all of these capabilities in a live virtual constructive training environment, you'll have students at MPS who are studying these topics in depth, being able to inform our warfighting development centers, being able to inform our mocks, and be able to grind on these problem sets day in and day out. Where the East Coast is sleeping, Hawaii is awake, and vice versa, wherever it is in the world. And I think that doing these at the highest classification levels possible, I think, is going to pay us great dividends. But it's expensive, and it takes time. So that, to me, LVC networking these organizations together, I think, would be very powerful.
Use NPS more, sir, and we can do that for you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank
Rob.
you.
I think cross-pollination and exposure to industry is incredibly powerful, and it can't just be the people who you're on contract with. Like if you're working with Saronic, we're the only people that you're talking to. We may be cool dudes, but you should be getting exposed to other players in the autonomy space so that you're seeing what is out there and you're continually apprised. I think it's a great point, Admiral. From a wargaming perspective, I mean, we invested very heavily in faster than real-time sim infrastructure before we ever designed a boat. So when you can create, and it is hugely expensive, but if MPS or someone else can create a tactical sandbox
Yes.
where sailors, students, or in the fleet can go run these scenarios that they're facing, and instead of griping about their commander's decision-making behind the scenes, they can go show how they would do it differently and see what those results are. It's hugely powerful. The trick is, how do you make it something that they want to go do versus a chore or something that they have to do. But I agree, it's expensive, but it is invaluable, and the people who latch onto it are going to be rock stars down the road.
James?
Those are some really good answers. I was thinking that kind of two things. I think the things that we can do that won't cost more money, which is just funding flexibility and organizational flexibility. If I have an idea, but it's not close to October, I shouldn't have to let that idea die because it's waiting on money, and I'm in a one-year program. That is unacceptable. Having the ability, and I know this, anytime I talk about funding flexibility, people say, oh, it's just so hard. That's just so hard. But some of these institutions are working on that and figuring it out with rapid capabilities, finding unique ways to do funding. I think partnerships like NPS Foundation with NPS is an interesting, great model where funding requirements are smoothed out and organizations are allowed to be flexible within these working spaces. I think that those are the tangible things that I can think of that will have the most impact without necessarily costing any more money, but allowing ideas to come and percolate and actually see it all the way to through fruition. Thank you.
I'd like to just expand on Admiral Vernaz's comment, and I agree completely. We need to figure out a way to tie our Centers for Higher Education with our operational commanders. It needs to be much, much closer so that our students are working on real-world operational problems. And where I'd like to take that is, how do we know if we're successful doing that? Before this, a couple of jobs ago, I was the commander at SMITIC, Surface and Mine Warfighting Development Center. My product was our WTIs, our Weapons Tactic Instructors. And I knew that we were putting out a good product based on the demand signal that I was getting. So my hardest job as the SMITIC commander was saying no. There wasn't a day, a week, a month that went by where I wasn't having to tell an operational commander, no, I just don't have enough WTIs right now to send somebody to you or to let them work on this project. I had to prioritize. I can envision in a not too distant future where that's happening to NPS students. Right? I need 5 students that can work on this project for the next 30 days, and oh, by the way, they're getting academic credit for their doing it.
Right.
That's how I think you'll know we're successful.
Thanks, Admiral. So for the group here, these are 4 leaders who I was proud to put on this particular panel. Admiral Vernaza has been a leader since he has been, I think, a 1-star in making sure that his force is well educated and demanding of NPS the very best that he wanted. He gave us high standards and stretch goals, but also gave us the flexibility of trust. So thank you, Admiral, for all of that.
Thank you.
Rob, I apologize to you. I've been reading a lot lately about the Reagan era and the buildup, and John Lehman's name comes up over and over and over again. So there I am. I have this blank in my brain. It's saying, it's Lehman, which one? So I apologize to you, Rob.
Well, I'll get this shot in. So, Uncle John, if you're listening, it turns out if you want a 600-ship Navy, you might want a layman involved. So I take that to
Well done. Good job.
And Jens, you have been very impressive since you joined us as a student. You're always challenging us, as I think the audience could tell now. Why not? And those are the kinds of questions that good leaders ask, so thank you very much. Admiral Alexander, it's been great to get to know you. When I listen to you and to CNP and the CNO, I have great confidence that we're in an era where there are changes being seriously considered to how we look at our talent and our flexibility to do that, and you're one of the leaders to do that. So thank you, sir, for being on this panel. Please, let's all give them a round of applause.
Thanks. Good job, guys. Good job. Yeah, thanks.
We've got to wait here for a minute for something here.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, gentlemen. Great information. For the audience members, just note that this has been recorded on YouTube, so you can look it up at West Conference 2026, so that you can recap what we spoke about, what the panel spoke about today. Ma'am, panel members, thank you again on behalf of FC International for taking your time to participate in this. As a small token of appreciation, we like to present a Naval Institution press book, Naval Power in Action by Brent Sandler. And that's our token for you and the team, and we want to thank everybody for being here and participating. We do have a little social within the exhibits. We strongly encourage for our members to get out there and mingle with our teammates that are here putting on the event for us today. So thank you so much. Thank you. I mean, they're individual, man, so let me see here.